Hey everybody, how's it going? My name is Jesse Roberts, and I am the host of the podcast that you're listening to. It's called NewWayStories. We are a comedy podcast. Hey, come on. Ben's job is the sound effects.
Trying out some new sounds for the name.
We're just, we throw it at the wall and see what sticks. We're a comedy podcast that talks about creativity, how to make the world a better place with said creativity, and we generally devolve into comic books and movies and things of that nature. Tomorrow's Free Comic Book Day. It's very exciting. Not for you who are listening. It will have been multiple days past Free Comic Book Day. So sometimes I forget this isn't live radio.
That was the original intent.
But today...
The original intent was, hey guys, what if...
I got this new... This breaking idea.
There's an industry that's booming, guys.
I'm going to get into
radio.
We're
going to get on first.
And we jumped into podcasting right about where radio is right now, I think. So we're really going for it. Today, we're not going to devolve, though. I'm determined for that because we have a very special guest. No. There is.
Talk about Pokemon for 5 minutes?
No.
Would have been as a news
Now you're just tricking me. You're just tricking me into devolving. That's your...
Guys. Robert Pattinson is going to play Machop.
I mean, are you just making that up or...
Yeah,
get out of
cool,
here.
though.
Okay.
He could play anything at this point.
B-Pats is in Pokemon.
Bobby
Patterson.
Pattinson. That's really funny.
Yes, we have a very special guest. It is Meg Hamand, and she is an author of... I keep wanting to pluralize Diamond. It's Diamond in Auschwitz. No, it is Diamonds in Auschwitz. Okay, perfect.
Oh, cool.
Diamonds in Auschwitz, which is a historical fiction book, and I read like the first chapter to kind of get like a feel for it, and like right away, I'm kind of locked in on just like the imagery and kind of the setup that you have, and we're gonna get into it a little bit just to talk about the book, but then also we're gonna talk through kind of historical fiction writing. But first, let's get to know Meg a little bit. Meg, where are you coming from today?
I live in northern Indiana, kind of situated between Chicago and South Bend. So if you're a Notre Dame fan, really close to that area. Excellent.
We before we were recording, we were bonding over some Midwest, long winters, that sort of thing. Yeah, that's it. That's
gray winters.
When I was in Chicago, I don't know if you have this experience in Indiana, but people who are lifers in Chicago, like it would drop to freezing some point in October. Sometimes earlier, and every time I would have somebody be like, "Ugh, can you believe it? This already it's happening." I go, "Well, when was the last time that it was started to get freezing?" They're like, "About this time last year." I go, "Well, at a certain point, we should be able to expect it."
Is there brush my teeth again?
Do you have
it's one of the daily ones.
Do you have a similar experience, people? I feel like Midwest is very much a love-hate. There, it's like diehard. I'm a Midwest, but I hate the weather so much.
Yes, that's exactly it. And then every time it snows, the first time it's like people lose their mind and they've never done it before. I'm like, we do this all the time.
Literally,
we know how to drive in the snow.
You almost do it
together.
You almost do it more often than not. Like it's essentially a 50-50 split. 6 months winter, 6 months not. Yeah. I also there's another thing, and this might be just like the old school tough Chicago, but like if you haven't experienced a Chicago winter, you're not tough at all. You're a wimp. But then they complain the most that I've ever heard out of winters. It's like a weird dichotomy.
Yeah. Yeah, that wind coming off Lake Michigan, like it just slices right through you.
It is brutal.
Awful.
It's worth complaining about. Don't get me wrong. The first winter I was there was the polar vortex. That was like it felt like negative 30. My wife's
vortex was gonna be my wrestler name. Actually.
Oh, that would have been a sick wrestler name.
Yeah.
What did you had a punk band? we were at a pastor's conference and someone was trying to give a heartfelt testimony on stage, and Darius texted me. He goes, "Punk band name."
Urinal fetish.
What is it? Urinal fetish.
They said they shared this amazing story, and she was so engaging and eloquent. And her story was so cool. I was weeping most of the story, but she did talk about this concept of a urinal fetish, and I was like, crazy, very sad. Freaking sick punk rock name.
I'm like, you can't.
If you're trying to monetize any part of your pain,
it's like you can't be texting me these things. I can't be like seen laughing like during this talk.
In the middle of she was also funny though. She was really funny.
So okay, Indiana, and what do you do when you were not an author? This is debut book, yeah? Perfect.
Yep, first book just came out in March. Yeah, so I spend my day job in finance, actually. So kind of the opposite of creative.
Nice.
That's fun.
So, okay, first book, but like, is this the first book that you've written, or did you have like? My experience was I had like 6 or 7 starts and stops, and then the one that I like saw to the end, I also had to rewrite like 7 times.
Yeah. So, no, this is my first book. I had ideas for other books, but this is the first one where I really felt like the idea came together enough that I could actually sit down and start writing it. So, this is it. You're reading the very first one.
Love it. Love it.
Really cool.
That's awesome. Okay, so Diamonds in Auschwitz. It is historical fiction. Follows a girl who is in Auschwitz. Why don't you give us a good breakdown?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, so Diamonds in Auschwitz is a dual timeline story. So it revolves around this diamond ring that was found in the mud outside of Auschwitz. And so the point of view follows who's got the ring. So the first set of characters is the woman who found the ring, and she's kind of walking in a fog through Auschwitz. She's lost her entire family, which we learn in the first chapter. And this ring is kind of the catalyst that wakes her up to realize like there is still life going on around me. And then she starts to engage with other people around her and really wake up and start living her life again. And then the second set of characters is the couple who bought the ring from the jewelry store, the guy who proposed to his fiance. She has the ring while they're living in Prague, Nazi-occupied Prague, holds on to it to the Jewish ghetto outside of the city. And then she's the one who drops it in the mud. So the idea is it's like a full circle, right?
Yeah.
You read the woman who picks it up, and then at the end, you read how it got there.
Nice. I love it. And like...
The love story immediately choked me up. That's crazy. That's I'm gonna have to get the book. I haven't got it yet. This is gonna be just like dotted with like leopard spotted tears on every page.
Yes,
that's
wonderful. I love it. I love making people cry.
The goal. Yeah,
no, that's great, dude. I love crying.
I think what was it? I mean, it's in the first like few pages that she finds the ring, and it's you don't know what it is immediately. She's just like clutching onto something. This is like a literary like idea that I really enjoy using, that you have something physical that represents, obviously something greater. And I think just this imagery of like she finds us in the mud and she's holding on to it and doesn't want the guard to like steal it or take it away, like to reveal. And it's just like so clear that she has like something, and she's like holding on to hope of like, and like, I think one of the interesting things with historical fiction is like you have an insight to like the outcome, right? You have an insight to what happened, but then you're kind of seeing these characters. And so obviously we know kind of the gloom story of Auschwitz and World War II and stuff. And so you don't know exactly how her story is going to pan out, but just that imagery right away. And I think I latched onto it a little bit because I struggle with like in 3 pages, how am I getting people interested without like cheap tricks, right? Like, which is what I do is I make jokes. I make jokes immediately. Exactly. Like I'm doing something that people are like, I guess I'll give it a few more pages. But like it's not a cheap trick at all. It just, you found a way to just like lock people in, which is awesome.
you. Thanks.
Was that like a choice from the beginning, or were you like, was that a happy accident? You're like, oh, she finds this ring, and then you're like, oh, wait a second, holds on hope, like all this stuff lines up, or were you like, yeah, I mean, was it intentional? Was it a happy accident?
Yeah, the whole point, I wanted to write about this ring. So I had read a nonfiction book where they just kind of mentioned this woman had held on to her engagement ring through the ghetto and the occupation. And she got to Auschwitz. She's like, I am not letting the Nazis have this. Like, it is a small way to fight back, but I'm doing it. Wow. And so she dropped it in the mud. And like, that was, then the nonfiction book just goes on. And I was like, wait. Like, what if you were the person who picked that up? Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did holding on to that ring, like, sustain you, right? Like, is it a resistance? Yeah, it kind of is. And how just fighting back in those little ways could sustain someone who is living through the ghetto. And then how finding something so beautiful, full of hope in like literally the worst place you can imagine, how that would change your life. So that was the whole focus of the story. And the two timelines just kind of came to me all at once.
Yeah. Nice.
That's amazing.
So go for it.
Go ahead, Jess.
No,
well, I'm
you
just
go
curious.
first.
I would love to know like a little bit, and maybe the answer is just you saw this historical book about this woman and her account of making it through Auschwitz. And maybe you just read that book. But was there anything compelling? Was it what drew you to the book that you read? Do you have Semitic heritage, or do you have a special interest in?
You're taking my question.
Sorry, dude.
I should have asked it. Now just like a copycat.
Do you have a specific interest in Auschwitz history or in World War II history, or what was the impetus for that, or just like again, happy accident?
Yeah, I just read everything.
That's so cool. That's
good.
Yep.
I read everything. I love anything history related, so I read a lot of historical fiction, and I also read a lot of nonfiction. So anything that just kind of trips my trigger. I also like micro histories, unknown things. So the book that I had read that sparked this was about women who went into Auschwitz pregnant. So it was called Born Survivors.
Oh, whoa.
So it was like this group of women, who were pregnant when they went into Auschwitz. And the book is about them giving birth and having babies and trying to nurse and survive inside this concentration camp. So like just unheard stories, right? That I didn't know anything about that. So that's what attracts me from all across history, all across the world.
That's really cool.
That's awesome. I my wife is an OBGYN, and that book sounds like a horror story to her. She's like,
it's probably a horror story.
I mean, just for everyone, but I just in general, it just kind of the pressures and everything of like of going through that, and then to like be in that environment. Oh my gosh, that's insane.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. So she should read it though, because it is quite uplifting.
Okay.
So no spoilers, but it's called Born Survivors.
Born Survivors. I'll pass it on. That's
like that title what you will.
That's like a good spoiler. What's the Mark Wahlberg?
Terrible if there were no survivors. Well, that would be really ticked at the author.
It's a Mark Wahlberg movie that's like based off of a book. It's called Lone Survivor, and it's like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen in this movie.
I can't believe it.
Everybody but Mark Wahlberg. I've never even seen the movie, but I know that's the plot.
I did see the movie. That is correct.
You did. She's like, I'm in. Mark Wahlberg,
so
anything. Okay.
That's
Born
how
Survivors.
The script to him. He was like, I get to be the only guy that survives, right?
Right.
I want to be the guy that lives. Cool.
Was
like, sure, Mark.
I was just talking to some people about the podcast, Matt Welk and Matt Alexander Darius, and they were like, how often does how often does Christopher Walken make it into the pod? I go, pretty frequently. So you got Wahlberg, and what was the other one that you got? If people are playing bingo at home,
Jason Statham.
Jason Statham.
We aren't recording yet. But Darius did a really good job.
That's right.
You all missed it.
That would be a pretty fun. We always we've got these references that come up time and time again. Like you could play a NewWayStories bingo, but I think a riff on that is just a random bingo card of celebrities, and is Darius going to do the impression or not? And
Drew Barrymore is the center free space.
It's always
Drew.
there.
I'm always doing Drew.
we got just like 4 more guests, and then we could do our own Hollywood Squares. She's redoing Hollywood Squares. I don't know. That's okay.
Deep cut. I like it.
I want to go into the research aspect. So you read this book, nonfiction book, obviously a little bit of research, whether you knew you were researching or not. But then you have to go in quite a bit more in depth in this. Talk about kind of that process and the weight of getting things correct in such like in such a visible. You're not like writing about something obscure that people are like, I'll take your word for it. I don't know anything about this. Like this is a very visible time in history that people know about. Go for it.
Yeah. And I wanted to be authentic because that's just how you bring sensitivity and respect to the people that, truly are involved in the Holocaust. So the FBI is monitoring my Google searches. I'm for sure about that now. Because anytime I just wanted a little detail too, like, okay, were there slats between the wood boards in the Auschwitz barracks? Like, would we be able to see the sunlight? And so I'm looking up all of this different stuff, as well as like the big overarching themes. I read a lot of memoirs. I read a couple memoirs of people that lived in Prague during the occupation, and then also who lived in Terezin. Read a ton of stuff about Auschwitz, which I kind of thought that I knew, right? I was like, I got this. I read a lot of books. I did not have it. As I start trying to write, like said all these little details. I think I had like maps and photos of Auschwitz on my computer all the time, which is again very alarming.
Yeah.
But I learned
how to create a concentration camp with thumbnail.
Yeah.
We definitely need to keep an eye. They're smoking cigarettes.
Yeah. What is she looking up now? Yeah. But so that was really interesting. And I everything that the Nazis do in the book, for the most part, like 100% was based in fact. Wow. All of the really awful things. And, so the one character, Rachel, who finds the ring in the mud outside of Auschwitz. And again, she says from the very beginning, like her family is gone. And I was really purposeful of showing like the progression of how Jews were treated, from just like someone gets arrested and shipped off and you don't really ever hear from them, but they say that they're okay, to just absolute neglect, not having any sort of medical care available to them, to then going through selection and like really brutal, aggressive, acts of violence. So all of that was really well researched and disturbing to read and disturbing to write and hard for readers to take in. Yeah. But the other really cool thing about the research was I didn't know anything about Prague. So we learned about this beautiful, like just really rich city, so culturally diverse. And I learned a lot about the ghetto outside of Prague called Terezin. That's the Czech name. I can't tell you how to say the German name. And
right.
We're going to stick with Terezin.
Yeah. I feel like that's pretty impressive on its own.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. But I learned like there was just so many cool and honestly uplifting stories that I was reading about this area. And so it was like, I have to add this to my story. I have to put this in the book. I have to include this real character. I have to use this as kind of the catalyst to move the plot along. So I thought that the whole story had come to me all at once. But when I sit back and look at all the research that I did, I was like, really, Hannah and Samuel's story was very incomplete until I started doing research and filling in these factual events into their fictional story.
Yeah. Now, and you've never been to Prague?
I have not. I feel like such a fraud to have written it. It was I did a lot of virtual tours.
Sure. Well, I was going to say, just obviously in the world that we live in, you get to do virtual tours. It's so rich that you can do research. You don't have to go to a place to write about it. But it is like, it takes an insane amount, because the book that I'm writing right now is based in Seattle, and I visit Seattle on a regular basis. It's in the neighborhood that my wife went to undergrad in, and I was like, I've got this. Like, I don't, and I'm on like Google Maps so much because I'm like, how does this line up for my story? Like, I thought that I knew this like the back of my hand, and now I'm immediately like, oh crap, I really know like 4 or 5 spots, and then outside of that, I don't know I don't know it very well at all. And so just like, even like making the, they always say like, the city is like one of the main characters or can be a character. Right. And I think if you want to bring it to life, that you got to do an insane amount of research and figure out things that you wouldn't normally just like think about. Right. You can't just be like, oh, here's the main landmarks and what the population is. Like, you got to find the in between stuff that makes it come alive.
I had to research the road that would be most likely to have a jewelry store on it, right? And then I had to make sure that like that was the road name in the 1930s and 40s as it is now. So it was like, really cool. I had the road map. Like you said, I Google Maps for Prague up all the time. If my husband would close it out, I'd be like, why did you get rid of my map?
I was saying that.
To like recenter it now.
And there's not like a Google.
It will take you 303 hours to drive to Prague.
To walk.
That's not what I want.
And there's crazy... no. Go for it.
Sorry. This is just before we move on from Prague, it's the funny, crazy coincidence. The video game that my wife just helped make all takes place in Prague. So I watched her research Prague for like 18 months.
That's really funny.
All the Prague stuff, there's actually a lot of Jewish folklore around Prague, like all of it's. Anyways, this is a funny coincidence.
That's the stuff. That's the sort of stuff that I like to get into, like the folklore of like the surrounding, like the storytelling that natives are telling to each other. That sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I had a question and it was good. It was a good question. No, do you enjoy the research aspect of it? I get a little, sometimes when I'm like finding stuff, like when I find like the little nuggets, I get really excited about that find. But some of the stuff I get a little like, this is, I mean, in like, if I'm writing science fiction, I'm not writing like Michael Crichton, where it's like ground in good science. I'm like, just take my word for it. This is what happened.
Just trust me on it. Yeah. I do really like research. When I was going for undergrad in creative writing, I thought that I wanted to do creative nonfiction. So like Eric Larson type books.
It's like my favorite book. I mean,
I love Eric Larson.
I did it right before I moved to Chicago, The Devil in the White City.
Yeah,
and then
for sure.
Everybody I talk to, they're like, is this all you talk about? But I'm like, no, but look, like all these Chicago things.
You walk down campus. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to do that. I was kind of obsessed with like Truman Capote's In Cold Blood, which was like the first of that genre. But oh my God, that's so much work.
Yeah. Right.
That's too much work. So, to me, like this creative, researching, but then getting to like, just make the stuff up that I want is like best of both worlds. So I have the history, it's really ground in fact. And, I also am not on the hook to make everything up. Like, I don't know how people write science fiction. Like,
just make up all
I'm not that good.
Right.
So half of the story is kind of written for me. I just have to research it and find it and then plot my characters in. So I almost feel like the way I do historical fiction is like the lazy man's out, because half of it's research and half of it's just made up.
You gotta find what works for you. That's the goal. Okay. So you mentioned that like doing the proper research is a little bit how you honor the people that went through this or is like directly attached to it. So can you speak on that just a little bit more? Because I think that I think when you're tackling such a tough subject, that's gotta weigh heavy like on everything that you're doing.
Yeah. One of the themes in my book is like this idea of, remembering and living on. And so, Rachel talks about, if my family's all gone and I die, nobody's going to remember their name. So even if I die, like I just need them to live on some way. And I think that even though my book is fiction, it's the idea of all of these people who suffered and died in the Holocaust. It's just one way to kind of memorialize them. Yeah. And then, like I said, too, there's a couple of like true people in my book. One of them is Fredel Brandeis, who I'd never heard of. I think most people have never heard of her.
I'm a huge Fredel fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Big fan. I'm a huge fan.
I'm a Fredel head.
Big fan.
Yeah.
She actually taught an art class inside a terrazine. So in real life, she smuggled in all these scrap pieces of paper in suitcases with the intention of teaching children art. And so she taught all these art classes to give kids an outlet for all these horrific experiences that they were going through. And then she smuggled all of the artwork out before she was deported and sent to the gas chambers. And that artwork is on display all over the world. Like it's at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in DC. It's in Prague. You find a really big Holocaust museum, and that artwork is going to be there. But like at the U.S. Museum in DC, she's not mentioned, and that like kind of pissed me off.
Yeah, that's
and I was like, I get it. Like there's so literally millions of people who died in the Holocaust. We can't name them all in one building.
Sure. But you wanted to represent for your girl.
Yeah, exactly. So like anytime I'm talking about the book, like I got to bring up Fredel because she's awesome and what she did for these children to help them through this horrific time. And then, there were 15,000 kids that went through terrazine and like 100 of them survived.
Oh my gosh.
So like, I just feel like that needs to be said. And by being accurate and respectful and just getting that story out there, that's how we can help these people live on.
Yeah. I feel like that's like historical fiction is, for me, what like does draw me to it is finding out, like you were saying, those small stories of that you maybe just didn't know or didn't realize. And then that kind of opens up this like a whole new world, Aladdin style of.
I was gonna say, are you gonna sing it?
Yeah, I mean, Darius can. He does a great Jasmine.
To approach this subject over, sideways, and under every single direction possible.
But it just then that kind of like it just sparks an interest and then I want to watch. I kind of go the inverse of what you were saying. If I read a historical fiction and find out like something inside of that, then I'm like, I kind of want to watch a documentary. I want to like learn more about the thing that they touched on. That's awesome. So, I mean, one of the things that drives stories is the character work. And I was kind of talking to you about this before we started recording, was in my book, Rat Race, this kind of this absurd situation where characters are running away from mutant rats. And but it's this big absurd moment that you get to like tell human stories, and it gets to like magnify like your choices, right? And so I was curious what that is like from a historical fiction perspective. That, I mean, you put a character in Auschwitz or Nazi occupied Prague, like this is. I'm using absurd because I don't quite have a better word for it, but these are absurd situations that you like get to tell a human story in. Is that like, does that ring true for you?
Yeah. I mean, and it's not meant in a disrespectful way, but it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what happened to these people. And so I'll actually talk about one of the characters who, fun again is probably not the right word, but was the most interesting to write. Yeah. And her name is Haya, and she is a 9 or 10 years old, and is brought into Auschwitz. And so Rachel will meet her at a couple chapters in. And Haya was really, really interesting to write because she spent 4 or 5 years in underneath the kitchen of some Christian family's home in hiding, right, by herself. Yeah. So totally isolated all of these formative years. She literally has no memories pre being in this cellar to keep her safe. And, spoiler alert, she ends up in Auschwitz again, like by like the 3rd chapter. So it doesn't work out super great for her. But she is like a blank slate. So old enough that I could give her some real thought and observations, right? Like toddlers are hard to write and make it authentic. Right. But also like just, she had nothing. She's like, I don't know what a bookstore is. I don't know what recipes are. I've like never seen the sun until I came to Auschwitz because I was only brought out of the cellar at night when the moon was out. Right. So that was kind of really fun and interesting. And at the time, so my daughter's 13 now, but it takes a while to write and get published. So my daughter was about the same age. And so I'd kind of like glance over, what's Lucy doing over there? Yeah. Okay. I think maybe Haya's going to do some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Haya
she
was on her
just
phone
still,
a lot.
Yeah, right. But she was just naturally curious and innocent and, friendly and all these things that kids have and hadn't been like scared out of her yet because she just was so innocent. So, but it's an absurd situation, back to your question of like this child literally doesn't remember anything except for playing in the cellar with jars of food and stacks of potatoes.
Yeah. So. That's and to like what you're saying about like still being like innocent and playing with things that are not toys, right? At all. But figuring out how to do that. When you're talking about referencing your daughter, it does at the beginning of like books and movies, it's always like these characters are based on nobody real, and I'm always like, that's not true. That's like all of the best stuff is stolen from life. Where you go, I'll see stuff or hear stuff, and I like jot it down where I'm like, that's definitely gonna be a character. Like I asked a guy one time at a coffee shop, I go, what are you doing today? You out grocery shopping? And he goes, I'm not really a grocery guy. I go, that's going in a book. For like, you're not a grocery guy? What does that even mean? Yeah.
Box of cereal, produce, meat. Nah, not about it.
Like, I'm never gonna come up with I'm not a grocery guy. Like that's an incredible response.
What does that even mean?
I don't know. He goes, funeral home director. Yeah, he eats out a lot, is what he said. I go, all right, cool. 24-ounce black coffee. Not a grocery guy.
Not a grocery guy.
That's going to be on his headstone. Ray Parker, not a grocery guy. Yeah. Okay. So, man, it's historical fiction character. I'm pumped to read this and to jump in to it a little bit more. It sounds incredibly fascinating. Now, you said it took a long time to write and to get published. What was that process? And you're like published, yeah?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's legit.
Yeah. I'm taking the unlegit route. I go, you know what? I'm just putting this on the internet, and you can take it or leave it.
I went with a hybrid publisher, so I'm like half legit.
Okay, great. Right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like it's on all the websites. It's a beautiful book. I've got audio coming out in June. So cool. Yeah.
I was going to say, like, I mean, in this whole like my self-publishing world, I'm always looking at book covers, and I'm like, I want to put out something that's unique, but you want it to be recognizable. If someone's reading a historical fiction, you want it to look like a historical fiction book that is published today, right? Like, you don't want to do something that was published in the 80s or try to reinvent the wheel. That's a bad choice if you want to try to sell books. And like immediately when I like see your cover, I like it reminds me of
that's so pretty.
It is so pretty. It's so good.
Pretty.
It reminds me of
that's used. It's like very cutting edge.
See it again. It's so pretty, and I like the
very cutting.
I love your energy. That's so great.
I'm obsessed with my book cover.
It's great.
Show it again. Show it again.
One more time.
Let's go.
A Gentleman in Moscow. That's what I was trying to come up with. It reminds me. It has a little bit of a Gentleman in Moscow like vibe to it in that. For that like historical fiction.
You can compare me to that book anytime. I thought it was a little bit like The Light We Cannot See. If you go pull up that book cover, it has a lot of those vibes. Also totally okay if you confuse me with that book. You'll figure it out pretty quickly when you start reading it. But
So what was your like the writing to publishing process? I don't know if it's interesting to everybody else, but I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
I just want to see the book cover again eventually.
Again?
When
I'm just gonna hold it here while I talk. So I wrote the book in about a year and a half, which isn't bad.
That's great.
I plowed through it. At the time I had a mom blog because my it was therapy to get through like toddler years. So I had to set that aside. I was trying to juggle both at one point. And so I set that aside and really focused on the book. So got Diamonds in Auschwitz done in about a year and a half. I was quickly picked up with an agent, which is so exciting.
Cool.
I know that it was too good to be true. No, the agent was fantastic. But I kind of joked with him at one point. I said, "You're trying to get me to play varsity. I think I'm only ready for JV." And he was like, "Well, we only play varsity here." So
that's the most classic like conversation with an agent I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Well, Toots, we only play varsity here. I'm sorry. I'm sure he doesn't call you that, but
yeah, I want to know. That would have been funny. I did want like a Max Perkins type of like editor, right? Anyway, so worked with him for a year. It was great, but I didn't get picked up like by a big five, as like I totally understand that. So then I almost immediately went to Greenleaf, which is the publishing company that I worked with, and then it was printed through their imprint, River Grove. So spent about a year with an agent, and then signed within a couple of months with Greenleaf, and then another full year for the publication. But it didn't feel that long, just because every couple of weeks something was happening.
Yeah.
You get through the developmental edits, then they send you the book covers, which was so exciting. And then you get to pick the pages and the font. And so it was like consistently they were communicating with me, and I was getting to do something or make decisions. And then in the meantime, I start writing on the next one. So the year honestly went by really fast.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
That's really cool. And so one of the benefits of even being a hybrid is that you can have any store order it, right? You go to your indie bookstore, have it ordered if it's not already on the shelf, and or Amazon. Yeah, that would make sense. That would feel like a pretty big miss. If I think I've mentioned it on this podcast before. It's just crazy. Amazon is the number one like bookstore, and then Kindle or KDP. The subscription is the number 2 largest bookstore. Like you can't even separate. It's like New York. You go, New York is the largest city in the world, or in America, and if you separate Brooklyn is still the number 3 largest city in America. You go, okay, wow, that's insane. So. Diamonds in Auschwitz, Meg Hamand, go pick it up at your indie bookstore or Barnes & Noble or Amazon. Doesn't matter, just as long as you buy it. It sounds awesome. And thank you so much for hanging out with us today and talking writing and historical fiction.
Slumming it with our podcast.
Slumming it, yeah. Boy, that is...
I was afraid I was going to be a bit of a buzzkill.
No, we don't allow it on here.
Would you like to talk about Nazis a little bit more?
It's really a danger zone. We don't want to get... That's Darius. It's tough. It was a challenge because we're like, we want to keep our podcast lighthearted. We want to take it serious. But sometimes we throw in curveballs where we go, hey, we're talking Auschwitz today, and how can you make it funny and not be canceled? And I think we kept a good tone today. I think we kept a great tone of reverence and seriousness.
We'll find out.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. It all feels better in the room.
That you say that, I have a few ideas on my notebook I like to float while we're still recording.
No, it's it was such a pleasure today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, everybody, New Way Stories. We're out every week, as you know. Like, subscribe, make comments. You can email the pod, NewWayStoriesPod@gmail.com. Go and buy Meg's book. We will put a link in the description. Incredible cover. We'll put a link in the description. But go if you're in Yakima. If you're a Yakima listener, go order it from Inklings. Yeah. Or wherever else you buy your books. All right. See you guys.